You agree that the Prime Minister and Minister Mendocino had already labeled the protesters in Ottawa as extremists. Is that correct?
I have no knowledge of that. I don't agree with that.
But you can agree that on January 31st, 2022, the Prime Minister addressed the nation on TV and on the internet by video. Do you remember that?
No, sir.
You don't remember that?
No, sir.
When the Prime Minister went on television to the whole nation and talked about the Ottawa protest on the following Monday. You don't remember that?
I know the Premier spoke. I have no recollection of what he said. I was busy doing other things.
Well, I'm going to read you what he said, and you can tell me if you remember it. And he stated, "I know you are wondering about what you saw in our capital city this weekend. As my friend Erwin Cotter said on Saturday's Freedom of Expression, Assembly and Association of the cornerstones of democracy, but Nazi symbolism, racist imagery, and desecration of war memorials are not. It is an insult to memory and truth. Hate can never be the answer. Over the past few days, Canadians were shocked and frankly disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in the nation's capital. I want to be very clear. We are not intimidated by those who hurl insults and abuse at small business works and steal food from the homeless. We won't give in to those who fly racist flags. We won't cave to those who engage in vandalism and dishonor the memory of our veterans. There is no place in our country for threats, violence, and hatred. So to those responsible for this behavior, it needs to stop. To anyone who joined the convoy but is rightly uncomfortable with the symbols of hatred and division on display, join with your fellow Canadians, be courageous, and speak out. Do not stand for or with intolerance or hate." Do you remember hearing that now?
Actually, now that you've read it to me, sir, I not only remember it, but I agree with it.
Okay. And so you can agree there that the Prime Minister has stated that being part of the protest is essentially standing with intolerance and hate. Can you agree with that?
I don't believe that was the distinction the Prime Minister made. He was actually telling people who don't agree with those measures not to stand with those who do.
Right. And I take it you know that when the protesters arrived on January 28th up to February 1st, that the evidence to date is that they were largely and completely peaceful and that there was little to no violence. Do you agree with that?
And again, I think there might have been isolated incidents, and frankly, I also believe the carrying of hateful symbols, like a Nazi flag, is in many ways causing fear, and it is a form of violence and intimidation against people who would be caused to be very fearful about such symbols in their community.
And so the bearer of the Nazi flag, that is a person who is hateful, and it is someone that the government of Canada is concerned about. Is that fair?
Again, I don't know the person who was bearing the flag, and I wouldn't comment on that, but I know how hurtful a Nazi flag can be to very many Canadians who in their life experience, that's a symbol of anti-Semitism, hatred,
I understand.
And fear.
And so I understand that you're also, though, you're familiar with the company Enterprise Canada. It does work for the Liberal Party of Canada.
I'm not, sir.
Are you familiar with Suprad Davani? Does that sound familiar?
I'm not, sir.
Are you familiar with a Mr. Brian Fox?
No, sir.
Have you heard anything about the individual carrying the Nazi flag actually not being a protester, but somebody sent there so that photos were taken? Have you heard anything about that?
Only from you, sir.
Okay. And we'll just come back to the issue with the labeling then. I take it, though, that you consulted your comms people on the narrative that you wanted the media to accept before the protesters even got here, according to that email?
No, sir, that's not correct.
That email states that they were buying the narrative. That's what it states.
With respect, sir, I believe what the email says is that some of our communications people were examining and being prepared for the event coming, but no decision had been made. None of that was presented to me, and it did not form any of my messaging. Can
you agree that from the protesters' arrival, at least after February 4th, you intended and wanted the protesters removed by force, didn't you?
Absolutely not, sir. I wanted the protest to end and then to be removed, but I've always been committed to doing that as peaceably and proportionally as possible.
But you couldn't talk to them after they had been labeled these extremists, because your colleagues and yourself, of course, extremism, Nazis, terrorists, you can't talk to that sort of group, can you? It would look bad, wouldn't it?
I would actually disagree with your characterization. In various points of my life, sir, I've engaged with people who are engaged in protest, and so frankly, I disagree with your characterization.
So on February 7th, 2022, when the mayor of Ottawa asked the federal government and yourself to bring in a mediator to meet with the protesters, do you remember what you said to your chief of staff in response to that?
No, sir. Perhaps you could share it with me.
If we can bring up document SSM.NSC.CAN.0003070_rel.0001. So this is your response to finding out about the request for a mediator. And you respond as follows. I don't know who is advising Mayor Watson, but this is a bad mistake. He has conceded without ever using the many tools available to the city. His language is also problematic. This is not a labor dispute between interests. It's an unlawful occupation. As long as the city and its police refuse to do anything, no progress will be possible. So I take it at the time when you wrote that to your chief of staff, that was how you felt, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
That's an email from myself to my chief of staff.
Correct. And so it's fair to say that you did not want to bring in a mediator.
I was concerned about the intention of the mediation and what was being negotiated. In my experience, the intent of engaging with protesters is to bring a peaceful resolution to the protest.
Yes, but also then on February 11th of 2022, you were given a copy of the engagement proposal that Inspector Bedoin of the OPP and Deputy Minister Stewart had drafted, right? You were emailed a copy.
You'll have to share it with me, sir, to help me recall.
If we can bring up document SSM.CAN.0006131_rel.0001. If we can scroll down to the bottom. And so this is attached as the draft for your review and comments. I have validated the proposed approach with the OPP expert and since shared the draft, but no word back yet. And that is from Deputy Minister Rob Stewart. And it is on February 11th, 2022 at 12 p.m. And if we can go up, and we can keep going. It is then forwarded to you by your Chief of Staff, Astravas Zita. And then it appears, if we can scroll up, you have a response, but it's redacted under Section 39 of the Canada Evidence Act. Now, can you agree with me that your Chief of Staff should not a member of Cabinet?
That's correct.
Right. So what was your response here?
I don't recall.
You don't recall. Would it be helpful to the Commission if we had your response?
I don't know because I don't know. I don't recall the response.
You don't recall the response? But given that it's an engagement proposal and in the meeting when you actually had it before you, there's notes to the effect that this isn't action, we want action. Is it fair to say that both yourselves, including the Prime Minister and Minister Mendocino, you were never on any terms going to carry out any such proposal that would essentially require you to go and talk to the protesters? Were you?
No, sir. I don't agree with anything you've just said.
So you had always been open to meeting with the protesters?
We were, and Deputy Stewart had advised that he was involved in a process of engagement with the protesters. But I frankly, I was not in favor of having senior ministers of government go out and engage with the protesters. In my experience, that's done at an officials level and not involving cabinet ministers, or certainly not the Prime Minister.
But right now, as I understand it, and there has been testimony that it's not uncommon for law enforcement to request of the political branch to assist in a negotiation like that. It's actually relatively common. They testified to that. So what was the problem? Was it because you couldn't be seen to meet with Nazis and extremists? Is that what was the issue?
First of all, I disagree with the characterization you've just provided, but I'm not. I don't have any experience in the many years I've dealt with public order events of engaging with political figures to engage with protesters.
Okay, can we please bring up one last document, SSM.can.000087